And we are back with the Raging Loop. 5:12 Monday. I woke up with a splitting headache. Oh man. Morning already? Light poured into through the frosted window. I pulled out my phone and checked the time. 7 in the morning. Gone to sleep somewhere between 2 and 3, which probably wasn't quite enough sleep. At least I didn't wake up to some horror movie scene. The building wasn't in ruin and the girl wasn't actually a skeleton. Though in a way, this might have been worse. She was spread out on the floor on the other side of the mini table. Her breathing was mixed with some weird gargling sound. I hesitantly looked at her. The saint that saved me from hell I was in last night puked in the middle of her sleep. What was I supposed to do here? As a guest, I really shouldn't be too harsh on her. Chai-mi-chan. She was waking up. Well, I just do it what little I could. That should be enough. Good enough. I've used a ton of toilet paper to clean up her mess and flushed it down the toilet. I left a stain on the floor, but it wasn't dirty to begin with, so whatever. I'd even wet a towel and cleaned her face, even though she showed no signs of waking up. Some of it was on her hair and clothes, but I figured it was best if she took care of that herself. Chai-mi-chan. The first hint of consciousness so far today. I'll be leaving for a bit. Without waiting for a response, I walked to the entrance. She had to take a shower and change and all that, so I killed some time outside. I stepped onto my wet, still damp shoes with bare feet. My socks were in the washing machine with the towel he gave me to wipe my legs and reached for the doorknob. I opened the door and was greeted by a gust of wind. The raindrops gathered on the leaves of the tree next to the building flew right into my face, making me grimace. The rain from last night was already over. The sky was pretty clear, but despite that, I noticed the visibility of my surroundings was poor. The building was surrounded by leaves. The old contract is basically buried in a forest of trees, about as tall as itself. There were branches poking out into the exposed hallway. It almost felt like they'd reach out and grab me if I wasn't too careful. I kind of felt like I was in an overgrown ruin. I turned around and saw the room and Chiam just as I left them. Yep, it was all real. I closed the door. There were other rooms in the building which made me wonder if they were occupied. Hell, I wondered the same thing about the area in general. I pushed the branches aside to see if there were other buildings nearby. Suddenly, something entered my vision. It didn't feel right. Something that shouldn't have been there. The leaves I moved revealed a woman clad in curious clothing. The moment I recognized her as such, she opened her closed eyes. Did our eyes meet? Another strong wind. I shielded my face from the spray of raindrops. When I looked outside again, the woman was nowhere in sight. Was that an illusion? If not, then what? What kind of place was this? It could have been a real Hick Valley margin village, a branch of actual ruins, or an illegal settlement. I had some theories, but I set them aside for now. It seemed like a place worth exploring. I went down the stairs and found no signs of the woman, or anyone else for the matter. A short distance away from the building. I turned around, and sure enough, it was pretty much covered in trees. I went to the place where I saw the woman. There were footprints in the grass here. Maybe I'd find her if I followed them. They led me to an open area. It was unused, but it looked like someone was trying to do something with it. Was this supposed to be a construction site? Even if it was clearly abandoned. There were large rocks and lots of settlements near a prefab. From what I could tell, there had been a giant landslide which forced them to stop construction. The fact that plant growth was still minimal meant that it happened fairly recently. The footprints seemed to be going down the hill next to the site. Well, you know, I finally saw something that could be called civilization. There was a set of paddy fields with houses nearby. So this was actually a settlement. What a relief. I decided to keep following the footprints and approach the settlement. I came across another unpaved path that was clearly used by people and cars. It was lined with weeds and bushes reaching up to my waist. It was home to caterpillars, grasshoppers, among other things. Spiders were no exception. There were no shortages of insects. There was a good place for a net. I wasn't particularly scared of spiders, but I didn't like them. Neither, at least they were just harmless or webbers. Regardless, I avoided these bushes just in case, followed the path like the good city boy I was. There was a large boulder surrounded by grass. It was strangely tall and making it look like it was put there by people. Oh, its dewy surface, there was a gray tree frog ready to go after many insects scattered about. I walked a bit further and came across a house with a small field nearby. The field's location made it safe to assume it belongs to the inhabitants. If there were inhabitants, in a way, I couldn't see anyone. And just like that, there was grass everywhere. There was another boulder standing next to the house. This one was obviously placed by human hands. What was the point? Was it a monument or something? The footprints continued to the field. The wet mud on the field was full of small, young, but healthy-looking rice plants. If you ignored the standing boulders in the area, the place looked like a normal farming village. I was both relieved and worried at the same time. From what I saw, there weren't any other buildings besides the settlement. Every one thing beyond was just a mountain, meaning that this place was completely isolated. And I was a complete outsider. There was no way things would go well if I ran into a random local. I belated, crouched to hide myself a bit. It was probably the best for me to go back. Chimmy. Suddenly, I heard a sound. I looked for the source and found a speaker on a wooden utility pole in the middle of a small plaza. A morning broadcast? I'd never heard this tune before. It was cheerful at first, but it had some parts that seemed really dark. I found it unsettling. Perplexed, I stopped walking, and what happened next made me hide myself. There was a person in the area, densely surrounded by houses. But they weren't normal. What was with that appearance? What was with that on her face? Though I was a fair distance away, I could see an old woman with some sort of cloth over her face shakily walk out from between the building. Oddly enough, there were boulders even there. But even weirder was the fact she walked up to one of them, lightly joined her hands, and bowed her head before it, her face still hidden. Then all was silence. It actually looked like she was revering it. To me, it looked like she was praying to it. This was bad, really bad. I wandered into a settlement with a unique culture, to put it lightly. Forget causing trouble. An outsider like me could get killed here. I just turned around and ran for it. I dashed up the hill, past the house, through the construction site, until I arrived back at the apartment building. Chimi looked like a relatively reasonable person. Maybe she could tell me what was up. It just hit me that she described this place was somewhat weird. She basically said it wasn't normal. Or maybe you're a serial killer who brought me here just to get me drunk and kill me. Well, so I'm some evil mountain witch now. Sounds great. Pickle you good. Whoosh whoosh. No way. What if she was actually the bait they used to lure outsiders here? Eventually, the broadcast stopped. Jamie still hadn't came out of her room. She didn't respond even when I knocked or called out to her. She wasn't even real. I didn't even have to worry about this, right? I just made my explicable unease grow worse. What if this was a trap? Was I in a dangerous situation? I had to talk to her. If she was a normal person in a way. Maybe my best option was to run away right now. I wouldn't know where to run. I couldn't remember the path we took in here. Though I was pretty sure we went uphill, so maybe I'd go down? If I avoided the settlement and went back to the mountain stream, I could escape by following the wild roads. That was my best option, even the difficulties considered. Carefully, I've taken my bag with me. I took out 5,000 yen note and put it in Chimi's newspaper box. It was payment for last night's beer. The moment I turned around to take my leave, the door to the staircase opened slightly with a creak. I saw an eye glaring at me through the gap. Her high-pitched scream pierced my eardrums. I screamed too, scared shitless, and ran for it. Suddenly, I stepped onto the wet hallway floor at a bad angle. I fell. Thud, thud, thud. Haru-chan, what's wrong? Who are you, and are you alright? The reasonable-sounding voice prompted me to shake off the pain and raise my head. There were two boys in formal-looking clothing. Are you alright? He repeated the question. Yeah, I was just startled. Your friend with Chini-chan? Chini? Oh, you mean Jimmy-chan. Are you a friend of hers from college? She didn't tell us anyone was visiting. Oh, I just got into some trouble and she helped me out. There's nothing shady about me, though I know that's hard to believe. Man, how do I handle this? Anyways, my name is Haruki Fusashi. I'm Yasananaga. Orobi. This is... Mochi is fine. Good to know. If I called him, maybe he'd stop calling me old man. I was only 24. This Haru-chan? What are you doing? Apparently this Haru-chan was the person who looked at me through the gap in the door and screamed. He seems safe. Come out. A moment later, she slammed the door shut and after a few moments of hesitation opened it again. Whoa, She looked like a student too, except her fashion sense was exceptionally flashy.
あなた、誰ですか?
Name's Haruki Fusashi. I crashed my motorbike nearby and Chisakasaros helped me out. Are you saying you spent the night in her room?
昨日の夜、知恵姉の部屋に。
Yeah, She cut my words short with a ear-piercing shriek. So that's what was so newsy. What were you thinking? You're not supposed to enter an unmarried girl's room. It's indecent. Yeah, I was hesitant too, but Chimiki-chan was kind of enough to let me in.
ちえみちゃん、あれなれし。それじゃあもしかしてちえ姉が出てこないのって。ドアに5000円挟んであるじゃ。
Don't tell me you... No. She just gave me lots of booze. I'm paying back for that.
ちえ姉の体が5000円ってそんな安いわけないでしょ。ただれてるな。
The hell were these kids saying? Hey, can you help me out? You drank with a girl you just met and she's not coming out. Crap, I had no allies here. What's going on? So the subject of the conversation joined in. Oh, Chimi-chan, can you tell them what happened last night? Something was off about her aura. What happened to the lively girl she'd been yesterday? Chimi, did you? Man, this is embarrassing. Whoa. Wait, hold on, stop. I can't be a bride anymore. Ear-piercing screech. What? Man, what a mess. Though Chimi was all pale, she was actually grinning. She obviously had a bad hangover, but that didn't stop her from messing around. After calming everyone down, explain what actually happened. How we met in the middle of the night. How she let me stay out of goodwill. And how we drank ourselves silly and how nothing happened between us.
いやー、久々に深酒しちゃって思いっきり入っちゃったよ。春明さん、お見苦しいとこ申し訳ない。
Hey, I don't mind it. That Haruchi-chan still looked at me funny. Anyways, sorry I was so tired yesterday that I couldn't refuse her kindness. He's got good reason for being here too, so maybe the elder will understand. Where did you find him anyway? Next to the river, further down. That's a big deal. 2 people overheard just 2 days ago. Did I say something bad? What do you mean by 2 people over there just 2 days ago? I wasn't trying to touch her and I wasn't filthy. Sure, I had a bath in over a day, but still. Hey, you, why is it a big deal? That sounded bad. Can you tell me more? It's a bit complicated. For now, just keep in mind that this is the countryside. Things are different here than in the city. This guy here was an Orobi-chan, ignored Chimi-chan, and was the easiest person to talk to. What should I do?
乗るっきゃなくないもっち。とりあえず行っちゃいな。私らちょっと遅れていくから。
Well, I guess it's best to go separately. There's gonna be some disagreements.
さすがヤスくん、察しがいいぞ。ごめんけど二人のお守りよろしくね。
Sure.
もう知恵ね、子供扱いはやめてよ。そうだ、うんこしてやるぞ。
Just let you get going, you two. So the students walked off towards the stairs. It was kind of easy to tell what sort of relationship they had. In a way. So they live in the building too? A student dorm in this Hickville? Still, my senses had betrayed me. There were actually other people here.
ちなみに春明さん、他の人と出会ってトラブったりしてないよね。
Yeah, I was careful on that front.
ならよかった。よし、ちょっとしたら食堂に行きましょう。
Oh, for breakfast?
の、朝食は今から食べてください。食堂へは一応面通しをしに行くの。
To who?
よそ者が皿長からやってきたってことに文句を言いそうな人たち。
So like that Taba person, huh? I'm in your hands then.
いいってことです。その代わり、朝のことは秘密で。
Sure thing. What's Saranaga? Anyways, that river?
そう、皿長の瀬っていう川だけど、あの辺まとめて皿長って呼ぶの。ちょっと曰くのある場所でね。
It does?
うん。あの川は汚れていて、死人が帰ってくるみたいな伝説がね。
Oh. So that's why they reacted like that. Any other rules or customs I should be aware of?
たくさんあります。なので基本、ちえみちゃんにお任せを。
Gladly on all fronts. If I may ask, am I in danger?
ないない。でも、いろいろ不愉快な思いをする前に、早く出ていけた方がいいかも。
You're gonna lay on the groundwork for that, huh?
そうそう。
The settlement I strayed to was a weird place, but at least the guide was reliable. And she wanted me to leave ASAP, huh?
Hmm?
That was depressing. Jimmy gave me some cup ramen for breakfast. She boiled the water in a small electric kettle. The girl herself was too hungover to eat anything. I did take the opportunity to pay her back for last night's drinks in person, though. Then we made our way to the dining hall. What are these boulders?
一応お守りみたいなもの。昔からあるよ。
I've never seen anything like them anywhere else.
ああ、言われたらそうかも。
She led me along a narrower path than I followed earlier. It didn't seem like any cars used this one. It was very farmy, I guess. This area was also littered with those boulders. Some were cracked, broken, and half buried in the fields. They were clearly religious symbols, but it didn't look like they were that important these days, or were they? Now that I was safe, I once again became curious about this place. Oh, there's a person. He was working on the field.
匠兄ちゃんだ。おはよ
Chai me waved her hand. The man responded but froze. Are you sure we should? The guy looked pretty
う。
surprised to
大
me.
丈夫。どうせ後で食堂に来るから、説明はその時にするってことで。
Well, she said so. As an outsider, I had no choice but to rely on her. This was also part of the village I saw this morning, where the buildings were more densely packed. I didn't notice it back then, but it was actually kind of weird. Basically, I felt desolated. The wooden bungalow in particular were more or less overgrown and buried in tall grass. If this was all I saw of the village and someone told me it was abandoned, I'd have easily have believed them. However, two of the buildings stood out. There was a hall right beyond the hill. It wasn't that big, but it looked grand and well obtained. The other building was obviously the dining hall. It looked a bit dirty, but I could tell there were people inside. From what I could tell, it was the most lively place in this poor excuse for a community. Suddenly, the three students walked out, chatting about something. Ajin Fusasashi-san.
再度おはよう。ちょっと遅くない？モッチーがバカなことばっか言って遅くなっちゃったんだもん。そうだ、僕が悪だ。味噌汁をよこせ。まあ早足なら間に合うでしょう。みんなしっかり勉強しといで。
Half dashing, the three ran up the path we came from. They're all in high school, huh?
そう、山をぐーっと登ったところに分校があるんだ。私も3年前まで通ってたな。
Sounds like a hassle.
それでもみんなあの寮に住める分優遇されてるんだけど。
Tyrion was entirely straight-faced. There wasn't even a hint of a smile.
さあ、気合を入れて入りましょう。
Yeah.
気合入んない。
We laughed a little and passed the curtain.
いらっしゃい。あら。
The inside was aged as the outside, but it looked well maintained.
ちえみちゃん、お客さん？
The hostess lady asked. Though somewhat aged and fatigued, she was definitely beautiful. There were two others beside her. One was a lady in her 70s or 80s. She was probably the one I saw this morning. The silhouette matched. The other was a man who seemed a bit younger than her, probably in his late 60s. Though they were just sitting there, there was a menacing aura about them.
紹介するね。房石春明さん。昨日の晩、皿長で迷ってたのを千恵美が保護しました。
The tension there was already peaked.
気にするのもわかるけど、これは単なる偶然です。あの子と違ってこの人は素性が明らかだし、バイクで旧道に突っ込んで事故ったって非常に気の毒な事情もある。そんなわけで我々としてはこの人がちゃんと帰れるように手伝ってあげるのがいいと千恵美は思います。どうですか皆様方。
After saying all of that, she fell silent. The ball was in their court now.
それは大変。
The lady voiced a harmless opinion, carefully not to upset the old people. It was pretty clear who was in charge. They were elders in more ways than one.
ちいちゃんはなんで夜に皿長なんぞ言っとったかね。
虫の知らせかな。前の日にあんなことあったし、眠れなかったから。
そいじゃあやっぱり読み人じゃないんかね。
やめ、タエバ。
From the conversation, it was pretty clear that something had happened before I arrived here. It was probably similar to what happened with me. She mentioned some little girl. Perhaps there was a child who wandered here like I did. According to Chimi, the Saranaga Rapids were a place of significance around here. It was a place from which dead people came to life, or whatever. So this Tay must have been the lady that boy mentioned, and the Yamiboto must have been a term for the dead who came from there. Apparently, the primary goal here was convincing these other people to prove and helping me.
おい、どっから来た？
The old man's voice put my derailed mind back on track. Oh, I'm from Tokyo.
いくつじゃ
I'm 24.
地位より上じゃが
I immediately realized he was taking a jab at me for hiding behind a younger girl. Nice to meet you. I'm Haruki Fasushi. Like she said, I wandered into the town after my bag crashed. I seem to be a total outsider here, so I didn't want to speak out of turn. That's why I asked her to talk on my behalf, but I think I should say something at least. I won't trouble you any longer than I have to, so I would be grateful if you pardon my brief stay. And please don't blame her for helping me.
春明さん
I think she went against the village customs by helping me out. The students also seemed surprised.
まあ
I'm an adult. I'm willing to take responsibility for any trouble I cause, as the best as I can. So please put up with me. I bowed my head.
ちゃんとしとるタイバ
あたしゃすかんわね。そんなに髪茶色に染めてから。
Shit, I forgot I didn't look very presentable to more traditionalist people.
よそは皆こうよはよう返せばええ
ほいじゃ好きにしなさいね。
I guess I got their behalf-hearted approval.
春秋春かうちの孫も春じゃ紛らわしい
So that means you're...
そう春ちゃんのおじいさんの牧島勘三さんよ
A pleasure. I didn't know what else to say. Haruchi-chan and I weren't on the best of terms so far. In a way, it seemed like we were all past the difficult part.
皿長に突っ込んだか
No, actually, I asked for directions at the convenience store, went down a side road, and ended up losing control on an unpaved section.
で皿長登ったかなぜ途中で引き返さねえ
He wasn't impressed by my choice of actions. It just hit me I had no idea how much time passed between the crash and my meeting with Chimi.
わしと匠で見てきちゃる
匠は他を見よるわよ。
タイバ追い出す思うて手伝わせ
カンちゃんはいっつもそうね。
What's going on here? We're joined by a new inhabitant. Chimi, who's that guy?
匠兄ちゃん
Oh, so he was the one who we saw on the field. Wow, he looked big from up close. All that field work was good for his muscles clearly, and from what I could tell, he was in his 30s. As Chimi introduced me and him out of my situation, I found his name Takumi. Man, that must have been hard. So, old man
わしと
Kazu.
前で拾う
Thought so. Tebe-chan, wait a bit while I help the guy. I already spread the stuff on the field, so I'll mow the grass at noon.
匠は優しいね。
It wasn't a big deal. I'll be so quick you'll think nothing happened.
そうね。
Nothing, eh?
お兄ちゃんや。
Me? What is it?
ここは休みず言うてね。あんまりええ場所じゃないんよ。
It was that place that wasn't good. Not my presence here?
よそのもんが苦手だし、よそのもんも触れんがええ。じゃから、はよ出てお行き。
Oh, that's the plan. So it's settled.
うんありがとう匠兄ちゃん
I was beginning to understand how things worked here. Although Kanzu Mishima's voice was the most powerful here, it was also important to get Tae-san's approval. Kansu-san was probably in charge of tackling the settlement's practical problems, while Tae-san provided spiritual and moral direction. When it was time to be civilized, Takumi-san came and convinced Tae-san, acting as an aide. It looked like Takumi-san himself understood such subtleties and seemed to be rely. Here you go. The lady brought some tea to the old folk. Perfect timing. Oh, Kori-san, looking forward. So that was her name. Sure, I'll make a lot. I'll be a reward for waking up early and working hard. Hey, I'm down for it. Yasumizu, Ba-chan, and you, it's really nothing. These two sure seem to get along. They looked about the same age, too. No, thank you. I already ate. Oh, that would be...
ごめんなさい。ちょっと急ぎで電話借りていいかな、香織さん。
Oh?
それはいいけど、お茶くらいは。
ありがとう。でも本当緊急だから。行こう、春明さん。
Sure? It didn't look like I could say no. We went to the nearby stairs to what seemed like a living space. At the end of the creaky hall, there was a black rotary phone, a rarity in this day and age. And I think this is where I'm just going to I think I'm just gonna end it right here. Remember, if you haven't already, like, comment, or subscribe. Thanks again. Love you all. See you next time.